Welcome to the Old Lumens channel again. I'm making another little video about the Human Lathe cut down for making a Maglight 2D to a 1D, and I've cut the body and removed a section, and I'm going to put the two pieces together. I cut this with just with a hacksaw, and you can see it's not really super straight. It's not super clean. So on both of these pieces that I've cut, what I'm going to do is, and I've shown you on this one, is I've taped a line. And as you can see, you know, it's thicker in some areas than it is in others. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to go in the vise, and I'm going to put this down into the vise where I can get about even with the jaws, okay, and just leave a little bit of material above. And then I'm just going to take files, and I have a couple different ones. I'm just going to take files. This is a coarse file, and this is a finer file, and I'm just going to work across that top and try to smooth down all the rough spots and get it even, okay, to try to make a good seam. I'll only worry about that a lot on one end, because one end of this will be cut on the inside, okay, so that it will be the butt end of a seam, okay. On the other one, I'm going to be cutting on the outside, so the other side of the seam I have to worry about on that one's going to be down in. And so for the moment, I'm just going to work on the one side that's going to be the one butt end of the seam, and I'll try to smooth that piece down as much as I can. The other one, I'll do the same, but I won't have to worry quite as much, because actually this leading edge will be inside of the other piece. One side gets cut on the outside, the other side gets cut on the inside. Okay. So anyways, that's what I'm going to do, and then I'll show you after I've got the cutting done. So here's a little idea of the filing. I have this one pretty much done, but as you can see on my little vise, what I do is I just keep working it around, and then I'm using leather jaws, and I just try to get the metal to where it's just barely above flush on that vise. Snug it down, and I'm using a nice wide flat file, and then all I do is just try to work that across it, you know, just like this, and try to, and you can see, hopefully you can see where my low spots are and my high spots are, and I just try to keep working it until I don't have low and high spots. And I just keep working it around like that. I'll work on an area until it looks like it's in pretty good shape as far as high and low spots, and then I'll turn it around a quarter turn and do the same thing again until I feel that I've gotten it exactly where I want it. It's getting pretty close, and if you can see the edge of it now, you can see I'm getting closer to the tape all the way around. There's a couple little spots where it's showing a little bit more material, but it's real close. So that's the idea of getting a smooth surface. At least that's how I do it when I'm doing this by hand with a file. Is just work it until I get it perfectly smooth, and then you can always take and put it on a table and take a square and just turn turn the, put it on a table and take a square and just rotate and see if you're doing this number or if you're fairly straight. That's another way to double check and see how straight you are. Okay, I've got the filing done to where I have fairly smooth edges on both of these, and fairly smooth, fairly level, straight across. And I'm going to start cutting with a Dremel tool. And I've discussed that I use a Dremel number 115 bit. This thing is 10 millimeters thick. Okay, that's what I end up having for my depth of my seam, where the two pieces come together, is 10 millimeters depth. When I cut the inside, I go right up until I'm at the edge, and that's my guide. I just use the edge of the part and don't go any deeper in. I stay right at the edge all the way around and make several cuts as I go through, and I'll show you how I do that. But the hardest part is making the outside cut. And what I do is I don't go 10 millimeters in. I go about 9 millimeters or so in, okay, because I don't want to be so deep that when I put the two pieces together that I automatically leave a gap. So I want this cut shorter than the inside cut, all right, so it comes together. And I just wanted to show you that, and then I want to show you that what I've done here is use tape to help make a stopper. One of the worst things about doing the outside is when you're doing the inside, you can press and you can and once you get a little bit of a groove cut in it, it sort of stays in its own track. But the outside wants to constantly come off or constantly cock on you. So what I do is I put this tape here to try to help as a stopper, so that doesn't go too far. I mean, I try to keep from getting that far when I cut, but inevitably it's gonna jerk a little or move a little bit, and that tape can help save you. All right. So, anyways, I'm gonna do some cutting here and try to show how I go about it, and as soon as I get everything all set and ready to go. Okay, I'm going to try to show a little bit of how I use this Dremel tool now. Mine is just a cheapy rotary tool, and I do have the flex handle on it, and I enjoy using that. But either way you can do it. I'm at work, so it's a little more difficult in surroundings to do this. But everybody's gone. It's inventory. Everybody's done. So. One thing that I do at home is I take a board, just a piece of plywood, and I put it on right here and clamp it down to the table so that I have a good surface to work with. With that board, I can rest my hand on the board, okay, and work. I don't have that tonight here with this, so I'll have to do it without a board. I've done it before, and again, I'm just trying to really sort of show you how this is done, try to give you some ideas on it. So now it's going to get noisy and I won't be able to talk much about it. The idea is that I'm going to take, I take two hands. I'm left-handed. Of course, if right-handed, it's going to be totally different for you. But I'll use two hands to try to guide this as it goes along. The other thing is I'm not going to go all the way around. I can't do that and have control, and being a rotary tool, spinning in one direction, it's going to tend to want to walk on you. If you cut reverse of the way the direction is spinning, it tends to chatter, okay? So I tend to walk with it as it goes along, and when I get to the point where I feel uncomfortable with it, which is usually over here on this side, then I'll just stop and I'll rotate the part around and do some more. The other problem is that I tend to do, and I'm sure others tend to do as well, you want to move your hand with it as you do it, or if you keep your hand in one spot, you tend to go on an angle, okay, instead of going straight along. And then of course you need to keep from doing this. You know, you don't want to have this cut down more than this. And when you first start off, I mean, it's easy to tell how you're doing because you know, the anodizing is being removed and you can see how much you're taking away. So I'm going to get to that point. I'm going to take some out of here and then show you what I do to continue to keep it fairly level as I cut. Okay, you could probably see from that as I cut, I could see if I was cocked. And you can also see that I'm not trying to get all the way to the edge where the tape is. I'm not worried about that right now. I need to get a lip formed in here before I start pushing it back farther. Okay, and I'm not that deep enough to get a lip on there to help stop. But I'll show you how I go ahead. Let's, you know, if I go all the way around this way, well, here we go. If I go all the way around this way, then I'll take a big magic marker and I'll color it back over again. Okay, and that's my little trick for keeping myself cutting the way I should, because now I've marked it again. And I'll do another cut here to show. I mean, it's just same thing as removing anodizing. You can watch what you're doing. Okay, that's my little trick, or my little tricks on how to do this. When I do the inside, then I'm going to do the same thing. I remove the first layer of anodizing, and then I'm going to use the magic marker to color it. And every time I'm going to make a cut, I use that magic marker to color it back down, and that way it really does help me to keep from doing too much of this tilt. Once I get farther down with this, then I'm going to use a file, and I'll show you that when I get to that point. Okay, I've gotten this thing cut down quite a bit now to where I can show you where the file fits into all this. I've gone about 8 times around. It takes 8 to 10. I make about 8 or 10 cuts to get deep enough. I try to make the cuts not really deep each one so that I don't mess up the part, and try to look to make sure it's true all the way around. But now I have been working that edge back towards the tape, and here's what I use a file for. I use a file that has edges that cut as well as flats that cut, and I try not to press down on the part real hard, but I'm pressing against that edge. Remember, that edge is the edge that's going to mate with this other edge here when it's all put together. So that's a very important edge. See, that's the seam edge. So I will use the file by filing like this to try to straighten that edge out as I work along. Okay, that's why I didn't cut all the way back with the rotary tool, because it's gonna mess up. And that way I'll use the file to bring that edge as true as I can. I mean, I cut it as close as I can with the Dremel, but I can never get it perfect, so I use the file for that. The second thing I use the file for is when I think I'm about finished, I'll go over it with a marker again, and then I'll file just straight around, put a little bit of pressure on it, and see where my high and low spots are. Okay, there's high spot here, there's a high spot there, low spots, and so I'll use that file as I go around to clean off those high and low spots and get it, as true as I can get it. The other thing I do to make about this edge is, the way I want this part to go in, I want the front end to be smaller or tapered compared to the back edge. Okay, I want it to be tapered, I'll exaggerate it like that, rather than to be tapered like that. Okay, I don't want the front wider than the back, I want the back wider than the front. Okay, so just a little bit of a taper, so as it starts, and then as you press it together, it'll tighten up. Okay, I take take the part up and hold it in the light against like a white background, and just roll it with my fingers and look at that edge. And as you look at the edge, you use your eye to look across it as you roll. You can see where you're low or where you're high. If you're tapered up this way, you're going to cut down on the front. If you're tapered too much that way, you're going to cut down on the very back. And then I can just take a marker as I do that, and I can mark, okay, I need to mark the front edge here, or I need to mark the back edge there, rather than marking the whole thing. And then I know, okay, I got to cut some here, I got to cut some there, and I'll do that with a file to get that thing all straightened out. That's my technique for getting a real clean edge, is to use a file at the end to get it all straightened around. Okay, that's about all the little tips and details that I can tell you. As far as fit, you don't want it to be a slip fit together. You want it tight as heck, so it doesn't come apart. What I do is I work the outside to where I want it. Then I work on the inside, and I check, and I work on the inside, and I check, and I work on the inside, and I check, and I do it real slowly until I get to the point where it'll just barely pop and start in place. Okay, and then what I'll do is I'll freeze one part and heat the other, and then put them together and smack them with a hammer, with a rubber mallet, not a hammer, but a rubber mallet. And you get it, as you do that, you just smack it, until you get the seam tight, and so you just push them together super tight. And I haven't had one come apart yet. I don't think they will. I haven't been able to take them apart after the frozen part heats back up and the hot part cools. You can't get them apart. So, anyways, that's the little tips and tricks that I know of, and I'm sure that as you try it yourself, you're going to find what works for you and what doesn't. But at least this is a starting point. Thanks for watching.